As a kid, I was always fascinated with history. I read about it, I watched documentaries, but now I want to visit and walk the ground of those historic places that I've spent years studying. Join me on my trek, History Adventures. In this episode of History Adventures, we're going to take a look at a few of the Medal of Honor locations here on Guadalcanal. During the Guadalcanal campaign, 20 individuals received the Medal of Honor for their heroic actions. They served in the Marines, the Navy, the Army, and the Coast Guard. We're going to give you a little bit of background history and then visit these locations. After the failed Japanese attack in late October 1942, and with newly arriving U.S. reinforcements, the Marines began to push towards Cochabamba. On November 1, 1942, the Marines crossed the Matanikau and pushed towards Point Cruz. Corporal Casamento, with his machine gun crew, moves along the ridges. The Marines closer to the shoreline begin to encounter Japanese defenders. The machine gun crews take a position near the end of the ridge overlooking Point Cruz and the gully between the ridges. Casamento and his crew become heavily engaged while defending the ridge and supporting the Marines closer to Point Cruz. Casamento is wounded but refuses to leave. He continues to fire his machine gun even after most of the Marines around him are either killed or severely wounded. Casamento's action supporting the attacking Marines near Point Cruz and stopping the attacking Japanese in the gully leads to a Marine victory. Originally recommended for a Navy Cross after the battle, on August 22, 1980, President Jimmy Carter, in a White House ceremony, presents Corporal Anthony Casamento the Medal of Honor for his actions on Guadalcanal. On January 2, 1943, reinforcements arrive on Guadalcanal. This includes the Army's 25th Infantry Division. The 35th Infantry Regiment of the 25th Infantry Division was ordered to capture the Gifu and the ridges known as Seahorse. On January 8th, the 35th Infantry Regiment moves out from Hill 27 near the Gifu and into the jungles towards Seahorse. The plan was to attack Seahorse from the south, capturing hills 43 and 44, and effectively cutting off the Gifu from supplies and reinforcements. The jungle terrain is dense and treacherous. On January 10, 1943, at 6:35 a.m., the U.S. Army's 35th Infantry Regiment begins its attack towards Hill 43 on the Seahorse. The Japanese troops counterattack and threaten the right flank of the 35th Infantry Regiment. The Japanese knock out American machine gun positions and push their counterattack. Sergeant William Fournier and Technician 5 Lewis Hall rush forward to man an idle machine gun. Their actions slow and repel the Japanese counterattack, but Technician 5 Hall is killed in action and Sergeant Fournier dies of his injuries 3 days later. The 35th Infantry Regiment would occupy the hill just south of Hill 43 the night of January 10th. On January 11, 1943, they would push their attack and capture the Seahorse by nightfall on the 11th. In June of 1943, both Sergeant William Fournier and Technician 5 Lewis Hall received the Medal of Honor for their actions on January 10, 1943, at the Seahorse. On January 10, 1943, the U.S. Army's 27th Infantry Regiment, the Wolfhounds of the 25th Infantry Division, began their attack on Galloping Horse on Guadalcanal. On the morning of January 10th at 5:50 a.m., an artillery bombardment and airstrikes begin to soften the Japanese positions on Galloping Horse, also known as the 50 Series Hills. At roughly 7:30 a.m., the Army troops begin their attack. The troops capture hills as they move up. Hill 52, which was about halfway up Galloping Horse, was a Japanese strongpoint with multiple machine gun positions. Artillery and airstrikes pound the ridgeline, and Hill 52 is captured at approximately 4:30 p.m. on the 10th. On January 11th, the 27th Infantry Regiment starts their attack on Hill 53, the head of Galloping Horse. They are quickly stopped, and due to inadequate water resupply, suffer major heat casualties. On January 12th, the attack by U.S. Army troops is again stopped by strong Japanese positions along a ridge on Hill 53. The Japanese position is a bunker with machine guns and supported by mortars. On January 13th, Captain Charles Davis volunteers to lead 4 soldiers in an attempt to knock out the Japanese bunker on the ridge. The group crawls on their stomachs, getting to within 10 yards of the Japanese bunker. The group is spotted, and the Japanese throw grenades at Captain Davis and his troops. Amazingly, the grenades do not explode. Davis and his troops throw grenades back into the bunker. Davis charges the bunker with his rifle and pistol. Since he is now on top of the ridge, he is seen by the other Army troops, who are inspired to continue the attack. The surge of troops pushes up the ridge, and Hill 53 is captured by noon on January 13, 1943. After the battle at Galloping Horse, Davis is promoted to major. On July 17, 1943, Major Charles Davis receives the Medal of Honor for his actions on the ridge near Hill 53 of the Galloping Horse on Guadalcanal. October of 1942 on Guadalcanal. The Marines hold the high ground on the east side of the Matanacao. Military intelligence and intercepted Japanese documents show a large Japanese force is planning an attack on the Marine perimeter. On the morning of October 24th, Marines spot masses of Japanese troops gathering in the ravines very near the Matanacao. General Vandegrift orders the 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines to immediately move from their position near Henderson Field to a ridgeline near the Matanacao. Sergeant Mitchell Page and his machine gun section were part of this group. Arriving on the ridge, Page personally positions the machine guns of his section. The machine guns were to support G Company on his right and F Company on his left. During the evening of October 25th, Page could see lights in the distance and could hear equipment rattling from Japanese troops. Later, around 2 a.m. on October 26, Page could hear Japanese troops talking. He moved from machine gun to machine gun, readying his men for action. At approximately 3 a.m., a large group of Japanese troops charged into the Marine lines. It became hand-to-hand combat. F Company was hit the hardest. Page was wounded in the hand by a Japanese bayonet, but continued to service the machine guns. The Marines of F Company were forced to withdraw from their positions. Page, moving from machine gun to machine gun, realizes that all of his men are either wounded or killed. Knowing that he must defend the ridge, he continues fighting. As the Japanese troops move over the ridge towards the battalion command post, Page swings the machine gun around and shoots them from behind. The Marines believe the Japanese have captured a Marine machine gun and are now using it against them. The Japanese believe the Marines have moved in behind them. Page swings the machine gun back towards the Japanese down in the valley and open fires again. As dawn is fast approaching, Sergeant Mitchell Page throws 2 belts of ammunition over his shoulder, unclamps the machine gun from its mount, and yells to fellow Marines, "Fix bayonets and follow me." He charges over the ridge and down into the valley, followed by yelling Marines. He fires his machine gun from the hip, mowing down Japanese troops as he moves forward. As the Marines get to the edge of the jungle, the battle is over. Page has severe blisters from his fingertips to his forearm from carrying the machine gun during the charge down the ridge. On May 21, 1943, General Vandegrift presents Sergeant Mitchell Page the Medal of Honor for his actions in the early morning hours of October 26, 1942. On September 27, 1942, the Marines made a landing just west of Point Cruz. Signalman First Class Douglas Monroe would be leading the landing craft filled with the Marines that would be landing on the west side of Point Cruz and then attacking the Japanese behind their lines. Once the Marines were on shore, Monroe and the other landing craft returned to the Lunga Point. After landing, the Marines of Companies A, B, and some of D suddenly found themselves under attack from Japanese troops and made their way up to Hill 84. The Marines were now being attacked from multiple directions by Japanese troops. They were in a desperate situation, taking a number of casualties, and each minute that passed, the Japanese were closing in on their position. Monroe and his group of landing craft were ordered to return to the west side of Point Cruz to withdraw the Marines. The fighting is intense as the Japanese close in on the Marines near the shoreline. Signalman First Class Douglas Monroe was manning a machine gun on the bow of his boat, laying down covering fire for the withdrawing Marines. He ordered his boat to position itself between the Japanese troops advancing towards the beach and the Marines loading the landing craft for withdrawal. Using his boat as a shield for the Marines, Monroe continued to fire on the Japanese troops. Monroe's was one of the last boats near the beach as he waited for every Marine to be loaded before withdrawing himself. While he continued to lay down covering fire, a Japanese machine gun opened fire. Monroe was struck in the head. His last words, "Did they get off?" President Roosevelt presented the Medal of Honor to Coast Guardsman Signalman First Class Douglas Monroe's parents in a White House ceremony on May 24, 1943. With the Marine landings on Guadalcanal in August 1942, the Japanese were planning to reinforce their troops on the island and take back the airfield that the Marines had named Henderson Field. The Japanese attack on Alligator Creek in late August was a Japanese defeat. Japanese General Kawaguchi had a new plan after extracting information about the Marine defenses from a captured American pilot. The Marines also gathered intelligence and knew about a Japanese attack that was being planned. Marine General Edson believed the attack would come on the Lunga Ridge just south of Henderson Field, now known as Edson Ridge or Bloody Ridge. Marine General Vandergrift believed the Japanese attack would come along the coast and refused to defend the ridge. Edson then asked Vandergrift if the troops could go to the ridge for rest since they had been in combat for some time. On September 11th, Edson's troops moved to the ridge and began to prepare defenses. Forming a defensive line farther south on Hill 80, also known as Hill 1, Edson places his command post a few hundred yards north on Hill 123, also known as Hill 2. The Japanese struggle moving through the jungle, but on September 12th at 9:30 p.m., Japanese destroyers and artillery began shelling the Marines on Bloody Ridge. Shortly after, parachute flares illuminate the area as Japanese troops begin to skirmish and probe the Marine lines. A Japanese attack finally began between the Lunga River and Hill 80. C Company of the Raiders was overrun and the troops in the area began to withdraw back towards Hill 123. The jungle, troop movements, and complete darkness stops the first night of Japanese attacks. During the day of the 13th, Edson moves his lines closer to Hill 123. The line extends from the Lunga River over the ridge and into the jungle on the other side. Late in the afternoon, Edson gives the Marines a motivating speech and the Marines are ready to fight. September 13th, the second night of the Japanese attacks on the ridge, begins roughly at 9 p.m. It is completely dark, no moon. The Japanese troops attack the right flank of the Marines and start pushing them back closer to Hill 123. The left flank and the ridge is also attacked. The Marine lines begin to break and are now in the form of a U around Hill 123. Some Japanese troops rush past Hill 123 and head towards Henderson Field and Fighter 1. The Marine lines are about to break and withdraw. Major Kenneth Bailey rallies the men and gets them back into their positions around Hill 123. Bailey keeps moving around the hill giving orders, rallying the men, and delivering ammunition and grenades to positions all around Hill 123. Bailey suffers a serious head wound but continues to command the Marines moving between positions throughout the night. Much of the fighting during the night is hand-to-hand combat, and after nearly 10 hours of continuous fighting, the Japanese are defeated. Just a few of the survivors retreat back into the jungles. Major Kenneth Bailey was killed in action on September 26, 1942, during the attacks on the Japanese positions near the Matanikaw River. On March 24, 1943, in a White House ceremony, Major Kenneth Bailey's wife was presented the Medal of Honor for his actions on Edson Ridge on Guadalcanal. The Japanese continue to reinforce their troops on Guadalcanal. They want to capture Henderson Field. They've already had 2 failed attacks, but yet they plan another. On October 23rd, the Japanese attacked the Marines at the mouth of the Matanikaw. With this attack, some Marines are moved from the perimeter near Henderson Field to the Matanikaw River. With this redeployment, Colonel Puller's 1st Battalion, 7th Marines, a total of roughly 700 men, are left to defend a 2,500-yard front near Henderson Field. Throughout the day of the 24th, Puller's men prepare and improve their positions. Japanese troops are spotted during the day moving through the jungle. Late in the day, a heavy rain begins to fall. In the evening, Japanese troops move past a Marine forward outpost manned by Sergeant Briggs and his men. They radio into Puller's command that the Japanese are coming. Shortly after midnight on the morning of October 25th, the Japanese attack in full force with a banzai attack. The attack moves down the Marine lines. At roughly 1 a.m., the machine gun crews under the command of Sergeant Basilone come under attack. Basilone moves from position to position, assisting his men, repairing machine guns and keeping the men fighting. When one of the guns is knocked out, Basilone goes to get another replacement. He also makes a harrowing run through the dense jungle to get more ammunition for the machine guns. He mans a machine gun himself after the crew is knocked out. Basilone also uses his .45 pistol when the Japanese troops close in on his position. His heroic actions holds the Marine lines and ends the Japanese attack. On May 21, 1943, Sergeant John Basilone receives the Medal of Honor for his actions on Guadalcanal. On February 19, 1945, Gunnery Sergeant John Basilone is killed in action leading his men during the Iwo Jima invasion. He is buried in Arlington National Cemetery. I hope you enjoyed that episode of History Adventures. Please like and comment on our video, and if you can, please subscribe to our page. We truly appreciate it. And please share with everyone you know that's a history buff. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next episode.